How do I create pivot tables with Python? Hello and welcome to TechMinded. I am Alex and I will be your instructor in this video. In this video we will review together how to do analysis and aggregation using pivot tables using 3 different ways. We will be using the pivot_table method, the crosstab method, and we will also be doing aggregations using the group by method. Before we start, if you have not yet subscribed our channel, do not forget to hit the subscribe button. Also, if you like this video, please remember to hit the like button. This helps promote the video to more people also interested in this tip. Let's start by importing the pandas library. Next, let's import the Seaborn library. We will not use this library to create graphs or plots. Instead, we will use one of its built-in datasets. To be more exact, we will be using the Titanic dataset. As a tip, in case you want to take a look of these datasets, you can get the list using the method sns.get_dataset_names. Let's now go ahead and import the Titanic dataset into a variable. By default, it gets imported as a data frame. Let's review this data frame and see what we have. It looks like the data has been imported as expected. Let's use the info method to inspect a bit more each columns. It seems that the columns age and dec have missing values. This is something that we need to take into consideration when performing analysis and drawing conclusion from this dataset. Now, for our analysis, let's get just a subset of this dataset. Let's select columns sex, age, fair, alive, adult, male and class. Now our first task is to get the mean age of the passengers by gender and survival status. This can be easily accomplished with the pivot table method. We only need to select sex as the index and the alive columns that contains the survival statuses column. We would then select age as the argument for values. By default, if we do not provide which aggregate function is to be used, we get the mean of values, which is exactly what we want this time. Let's run this and see what we get. Perfect. Now we see that we get the mean age of the passenger by gender and by survival status. Another way to do that is to use the crosstab method. With the crosstab method, it works in a very similar way. We would select the sex as index, then the alive column, age for values, but this time we need to explicitly select the mean function in the aggregate function argument. You can see that when we run this we get the same results. One additional feature of doing this as crosstab is that it has a normalize argument that transforms the values of percentages. It is possible to normalize it as percentages of rows or columns, but in this case we will not provide any additional argument, as we would like to see it as percentage of the total dataset. Lastly, let's do the same using the group by method. Before we actually apply the group by method, we need create a slice to select just the dimensions we want to see in the data. So let's slice the data frame and select the columns sex, age and alive. Then we add sex and alive to the group. Last we use the age as argument for the mean aggregate function. Also, in order to bring the alive dimension to the column index, we will use the unstack method, that by default grabs the outermost index. There you go. Now we have the same results. Now, let's say that we want to see survival information by gender to see if man or women survive the most, and also check the fair, to see if people pay more survive more. It is very similar to the previous example. We only need to change the values to fair. First, let's see this with the pivot table method. Then using the crosstab. This time let's specifically provide the value false to the normalize argument. Just like last time. If we provide the value of true, we get it as % of total. The using group by is also very similar, but this time let's run it without the unstack at the end. You can see that the alive dimension is in the index axis. Just like last time, if we add the unstack method to the expression, we move the alive dimension to the horizontal axis. There you go. Now we have exactly the same shape we had using the pivot table and crosstab methods. We can see clearly that survivors in general paid more for the fare. When we review the list of columns in the dataset, we can see that we have a column that tells us if the passenger was an adult male. In theory, if priority was being given to women, adults and elderly people, we would expect to see more adult males as fatal victims of the accident. Let's see if this is the case. To do that, using the pivot table method, let's have the sex and adult male dimensions in the index and the alive and class dimensions as columns. We will keep the fare here as values, but the reality is that we could use almost any other dimension, as we are only interested in the number of instances of the index rows. To do that, we provide count as the aggregate function. There you go. We can see that now we have the index separated by gender, and whether the passenger was an adult male, and then the horizontal index including the class of travel and the survival status. Now we can see clearly that females, children and first-class passengers survived more than third-class passengers and males in general. The crosstab method uses pretty much the same arguments as the pivot table in this case. Now, to conclude our video, let's do the same summarization using the group by method. Again, we only need to select the column we need. In this case, sex, adult male, alive, class and fare. They include all columns except fare in the group by and use the count aggregate function. Once again, we can see that if we do not unstack, we will have all dimensions included in the group by in the index axis. To move those to the horizontal axis, we just need to use the unstack method and then provide the number of the index we want to move. In this case, from left to right, we have sex as 0, adult male as 1, alive as 2 and class as 3. We will use 2 and 3 in the unstack function so we can get alive and class in the horizontal axis. I hope you enjoyed this recipe. I would love to see you again here in the future. Do not forget to like this video and to press the subscribe button to watch more videos like this.